to today's live chat, and unfortunately I forgot to tick the box when you set everything up to say that this was, oh dear, I left the noise on as well, sorry, to say that this live chat would be happening today, but so I hope that people were informed. But for the record, everything is always at the same time, assuming of course that this is the same time zone. The times change in North America when they change here. Today I'm going to talk about tariffs, because tariffs is what everybody is talking about right now, and to give some form of sort of a little bit about a background, historical background, because we often talk about things. So what's the function of history? And so what I've always said in the past, well, sorry, until quite recently, or comparatively recently, I said the point of history is that you can learn the lessons from the past. Well, no one ever does, and so therefore I've now changed my mind. What's the point of history? It's for entertainment. And now right, so as far as tariffs themselves are concerned, they're I don't know where to start actually. I'll give you a brief overview of, and then so if we look back, the first tariffs that I'm aware of were in ancient Greece, in Piraeus, and that was about 2,500 years ago. So Piraeus is a port, and anything coming into the port was charged or going, and that's how that started off. So the word tariff, in fact, I think I don't know exactly. I don't that many languages, but I think it's the same in just about every language. So the word comes from Latin, is tarifa. And I think, in fact, it even comes from Turkish via Arabic. So, it is something which has existed for a very long time. Not only that, in British history, there was this argument between those who believed in free trade and those who were opposed to it. And this was a big argument in the 19th century. But from the time of something called the Corn Laws, which was in the middle of the 19th century, so in the second half of the 19th century, Britain was largely involved in free trade. Having said that, it didn't show enough, in my opinion, support for the empire, and it could at times, for example, goods from India, which was part of the British Empire, could be taxed. And not only that, it was done to protect industries at home. And now, as far as the United States is concerned, from India, as far as the United States is concerned, there've been a number of programs on the television talking about this, and Trump's support for one of the presidents at the end of the 19th century, which I won't go into right now. Now, as the tariff itself was a book, which I used to use, and it was a book which is like this thick, really thick. It was really, really thick, a ring binder, and there was lots and lots of goods in this book. And if you wanted to import something or export even, you had to find out where it was in this tariff book, and then you had to give its number. And when it was imported into a country, if it was done properly, laid out properly, you had the number, you had everything, and then you could work out the duty rate on it. And if it didn't have that, it was the responsibility of the officer examining it to decide what the goods were, and then to decide how much duty. Now, to decide how much duty goes on something, you've got to have an invoice. And this brings me on to one of the things I think might go wrong now, is that there'll be a lot of false invoices going around, and the customs officials may not be able to understand how much it is. Now, but before I come on to that, the tariff, what's the point? And this is something I think the government in the United States does not understand. As I see it, there are two, maybe three reasons to have a tariff. Number one, it's to raise money. Now, there is a theory which I've heard repeated in the United States in interviews recently, that you could get rid of income tax and replace it with customs duties. Now, I suppose any form that is in theory possible, just as well as much as it's in theory possible that a political party in the United Kingdom could get 99.997% of the votes and still not be able to form a government. That's a mathematical possibility, but it's highly unlikely to happen. So if you put up tariffs to, I don't know, a couple of thousand%, and you could abolish all other forms of tax, maybe that would happen. I don't know, but it's highly unlikely. Now, at the beginning, 250 years ago, that was possible because the American government didn't have much in the way of expenses. So that was understandable. Now, when we were small, we all watched films about smugglers and read books about them, and wasn't this exciting? And what were they smuggling? Usually, they were smuggling things like rum. Why were they smuggling rum? Not because rum was illegal, but because they wanted to avoid the duties on it. And the duties came in three, well, then they came in two, but now they come in three taxes, which I shall now tell you. First tax that you'd get is when you import something, so that's an import duty, and let's say that for argument's sake that is 10%, because that 10% has been quoted by Trump a lot, so let's say it's 10%. Now the next thing you've got is something called excise duty. Now an excise duty is an internal duty on a product which is easy to calculate. Now normally you think of this in things like alcohol. So for argument's sake, I don't know what it is at present, but for argument's sake, if you put a tax of alcohol between 2 and 5%, so you might say this could be 2% of a cubic meter, irrespective of value, or 100 liters, or whatever it is. Or then above, between say 5% and 18%, you've got another tax, and then between 18% to 40%, you've got another tax, and above 40% something else, because that's easy to calculate. So if you've got then a bottle of whiskey, and if the tax is say for, I don't know, $200 per 100 liters, then you know that for this one bottle of whiskey, then it's $2 excise duty goes on that. Now excise duty can go on just about anything at all, so as long as you can actually measure it. For example, the Polish government, I remember when 20 years ago, wanted to put an excise duty on electricity. So if they charge a tax, an excise duty of, say, for argument's sake, €1 per kilowatt, well, that'll be horrendously large, but 10 cents on 1 kilowatt hour of electricity, then they could do it, because that's easy enough to measure. So that's what an excise duty is. So, and the final thing you've got on is a purchase tax. Now in the United States, when you go shopping for something, you want to buy a computer, for example, it's got, say, the computer costs $1,000, but when you go to pay for it, you find out you've got to add tax to that as well, which for us in Europe is unheard of. The prices in the shops are what you actually pay. Now in the United States, because it's a federal system, so you've got different tax rates in different countries. I don't really actually know how you get around that one, but whereas in, and sometimes you see, for example, California residents need to add so much tax and whatever. In Europe, each country has different tax rates, and contrary to what some have said in the United Kingdom, these tax rates are decided by the national country, although there are minimum rates at times. Now, to return to the subject of excise, there is excise is put on fuels. So if there were a situation like there was under COVID where oil was free, in fact they were paying people to take oil away from you, the oil would never be free at the petrol pumps, because not only that has the distribution system got their costs involved, but also there is the excise duty. I did a calculation during COVID that the lowest as an average price across the European Union it could go to was 67 cents. It could not go any lower than that. That was my calculation. It was in the back of an envelope, and it could be completely wrong. So but that's what I thought, at the time. So you cannot actually go lower than that because of excise duty. Now, if you import something, let's say you're importing alcohol, it's got a value of 100, let's say $100. So you've got a tariff that's 10, so that's now 110. You add the excise duty on top of that, let's say that's 20, it's now gone up to 130, and then your purchase tax. And for argument's sake, to keep the figures nice and easy, let's say it's 20%, so that'd be 26, so that's 130 plus 26, 156. That is the price which it will be imported at, and by the time it ends up in the shops, I don't know what the markup and the distribution costs will be, but you're probably looking between 250 and 300 by the time it gets to the shops. So give you a quick overview of the position. Now, another reason for tariffs, it is protectionism, and you want to protect the industries. You want to encourage industries to come to your country or to produce in your country to have the benefit of your buyers there. And this is what Trump, for example, says he wants to do. But now it's totally illogical, because he's either doing it to raise money or he's doing it for protectionism. Because if he was doing it for protectionism, to get people to come there, the thing is, he wants to do deals with countries to get rid of it. This is what he's claiming he wants, and therefore it's either one or the other. Now, no company is going to invest huge amounts of capital setting up a factory, and in order when the costs are higher, and in order to find out a couple of years down the road that someone else, there's no longer any protectionism, and therefore it's pointless. Not only that, and this is a problem which was not understood in the United Kingdom by the then governing party, the Conservative Party, that there are complicated supply chains involved. And these complicated supply chains could mean in goods passing from one country to another and backwards and forwards. Now, in what I do, my job, my normal job, is that there were, for example, boilers which could not be produced for the lack of sensors or some tiny pieces of equipment, which then could not be installed in vehicles, which were costing even 100,000 plus euros. And these vehicles, as a result, were all held up because of this. Now, today we have something called just-in-time deliveries, because companies cannot have piles of equipment just lying around in warehouses on the waiting for vehicles or whatever it is, or machinery or washing machines to be built. That's impossible. And with if barriers are put on trade, you lose this benefit of just-in-time deliveries. The British government accepted that the British motor industry would be destroyed. That was the Conservative government that was in the supposedly pro-business government. It just prepared to write it off. Because it wanted to put up these barriers to trade. So, as you can see, I'm in favour of free trade as a general rule. But there's yet another thing, which is political punishment for doing things. Now, Trump came up with this ridiculous equation, which doesn't make any sense to me. And now I don't know much about mathematics. I did a course in statistics when I was at school, but to be quite honest, I was not very good. I didn't really understand it. And but it seems to be based on the inequalities in the trade balance between one country and another. Now, I have an imbalance with Lidl on my shopping. I mean, I spend money there. Not once has Lidl ever spent anything with me. So maybe I shouldn't go there. The problem is I'm going to have to go somewhere if I want to get food, and I can't expect the food retailer to buy anything off me. So you're going to be stuck if you do things like that. And this is where the ridiculous nature of the current situation in the United States is. But to make it worse, what you in general have in developed countries, what was called first world countries once, is that you have the developing countries often produce the raw materials, which are then sent off to have value added onto them in richer countries, and which may then come back to the poorer countries, but in the form of, for example, if the poorer country produces iron ore, which then goes off to make steel cars, which come back as cars. But the difference in the value added by the services is much greater in wealthier countries. Above all, one country in particular, that's the United States, which has benefited from free trade since the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade was done, GATT, just after the Second World War. So the trying to punish a country for exporting more to you in goods, because the next problem is in services which are not subject to tariffs. And so, okay, yesterday even I had to explain how our products that we produce are not actually subject to tariffs because of we're giving a service, and which is more difficult to actually explain how it doesn't enter into the mentality of those who want to bring back industrialization. Where I come from, my region produced, the Tyne River produced 75% of all the ships in the world only 140 years ago. And now I think it'd be pretty ridiculous to expect that 75% of the shipping in the world to come back to be built on the Tyne. It just cannot happen, because things change, and outsourcing does have a great deal of benefits. Now, I do need to point out also that there are countries such as China. China is a dictatorship. People may have been forced to work. They use unfair labor practices. They steal the technology and ideas. Just to give one example from my own experience in life, in 2008 I was at a packaging machinery trade fair in Dusseldorf, and there were people from China, uniquely trying to copy machinery. But by 2011, when I went to the same event, they had copied the machinery, but they'd improved on it. So you were getting better stuff. This type of thing clearly is unacceptable, and there were cases there at this trade fair where you got one after another. Chinese booth was closed by an order of the Dusseldorf local court. They couldn't sell it because of copyright infringements and intellectual property infringements. So I do believe that China has been allowed to get away with too much, but I don't honestly understand how we can actually now resolve this issue. I think this issue I started rabbiting on about it 20 years ago, so how it's now going to be resolved, I just don't know. But I think at the time, this wasn't the time when there's so much difficulty in the world to try and sort things out. Can I give you some arguments, though, in favor of tariffs? And the first thing is something that's called protection against dumping. Now, there is something called an anti-dumping duty. So for argument's sake, and I don't know what the actual numbers are, if you have say shirts, there you go, and 10%, let's say there's a 10% tax on shirts. Now somebody has an order. Let's say it was the United States. Somebody in Vietnam now has an order in the United States. There's suddenly 125% tax or whatever it is. And so they've got a huge amount of shirts and they don't know what to do with them. So they send them all somewhere. They send them all to Germany. And so the German government says, no, hang on just a minute. We don't want all these shirts to any. So we're putting an anti-dumping duty. So there's a normal tax of 10%. And let's say the anti-dumping duty, which could be decided by the European Union, in this case, at 50% on top. So this would add to a 6%. Now, these sort of taxes are done from time to time. And the reason is, in this case, to stop too much coming in of one actual product. Another the reason is for anti-dumping is, I think that there are something called tax dumping. So that's when you've got tax haven states have lower rates of taxation, and that can also that can also lead to these lower taxes. No, just a minute. I haven't got my argument here very straight. Anyway, okay, we'll leave that one. On the subject of the anti-dumping, is you can also get something which the protection of certain industries. For example, once more, when you get things like goods made by children or goods made in prisons, for example, and so this is to stop them people actually doing this. But the thing is, this is if you've got a very poor country where children are actually manufacturing things, and you think, hey, that's horrible, the children shouldn't be made, so we're stopping this happening. Well, then suddenly these children may not even have access to food, and I mean these things can happen. I believe that free trade and poverty, as a way of alleviating poverty, then free trade could work. Now, the arguments against tariffs, and the best one I know is the basic economic analysis, it's called. There is historically, when there is free trade, it benefits above all the wealthier countries rather than the poorer ones, for the reasons I sort of just said now. Switzerland last year announced a complete free trade product on manufactured goods, and the Swiss government believes will add 860 million Swiss francs to the budget each year, rather than the opposite. Now, there are some countries which have rather restrictive practice. Russia was it's from 2013, and then it sort of put sanctions on itself following the invasion of Crimea in 2014 is a good example. India from 2017 announced a policy of buying Indian only. And and we have this situation we have in the United States. In short, I think the policy in the United States is a major. I think it's a major mistake. I mean, I must make it quite clear. I didn't do this at the beginning. Trump won the election. It was clear that he intended to put these tariffs on. People voted for him, and if people didn't vote, so one third voted for him, one third for Camilla, and one third didn't vote, approximately. So I would say that the one third voted for him, the one third didn't bother voting. So that's 2/3. So he won the election fairly. This is what he said he'd do. It's quite clear that if there's any interference in world trade policies, then the stock market's going to take a hit. What I don't understand is this: is it the stock market's taking a hit, but there's the bond markets have taken a hit. Normally, when you have a stock market goes down, the bond market will go up in its place, but they've both gone down. And not only that, I haven't looked today, so I don't know what today's score is, but as on Friday, the price of gold was dropping. Now, when gold drops, that is really, really odd. And the only suggestion I've got, and I could be completely wrong, is that this is there's people who are hanging on to certain commodities, and the banks are making calls on them. They might say, well, you've got 1 million shares in Tesla or something, which is a bit dodgy. We want the bank wants money for that which they've loaned. They're making calls on the owners of these things, so they get rid of whatever they can do, and maybe because there was an easy market for gold, I don't know, and then so they got rid of it. But I think that is I think that's the answer from my experience. I did run a magazine on economics a business magazine. So anyway, good. So there you go. I don't know if I've answered any questions, or probably haven't. I've probably just made it all more complicated. Shall we have a look at some of the points made? And anyway, oh sorry, I hope everybody was notified of this, because it was my fault. You have to set it up on my telephone, because I'm speaking via my telephone and not via my computer, because the computer is from 2012, but it's still working. So but the microphone isn't much good. And but on the telephone, I didn't. I was left the tick on private. It was only just before I started I put it on the public. So I mentioned that. Right. So hello, Ben and Craig. And Ben says he's been learning a lot about the Armenian genocide lately, and the teacher podcaster said that the Worlders, the wonders. Oh, sorry. And the teacher podcast said, if the teaching of history still makes a difference. Oh, sorry, I'm going to repeat the whole thing again. Ben says that I was watching about the Armenian genocide, and he said it's good to teach history because if we repeat it, if we teach history, then we won't repeat it. I think that's what he wanted to say. Aryan is in India, and hello, right, so Ben says this: I remember when the reverse engineering copying started, and then the improved products, and I don't think it's ever been resolved. Yeah, I don't know either. This is a major this really is a major problem. Actually, I would like to say something else about China, because I was thinking about asking if I could do a video on Tesla, and now this current attacks on the company. Now I understand why people are boycotting Tesla and doing things to it. Now I think that this was part of the arrogance, because we've had this cancel culture, which largely comes from the, how should I put it, the racist right or the conspiracist right, and it never occurred to them that the same thing might happen to them too. So I think that was the first thing, that they could be cancelled. That was the first thing. But the second thing is this: when people attack Tesla cars, when they attack showrooms, they do things of this nature. This doesn't affect the company Tesla. It affects the people who've bought them, and more to the point, it affects the insurance companies. So as much as I do disapprove of Elon Musk's political ideologies, that is really, I think attacking the cars is the wrong thing to do. But also this is actually people stop buying Teslas because the people who buy these electric cars are sort of more trendy, sort of I don't know, environmentally conscious people who tend not to be aligned with his political ideologies. And whereas now they may even start buying Chinese replacements. And from what I have read, I haven't used a Chinese, I've not driven anything which is Chinese, but the Chinese cars are better. It's from the reviews that I'm reading. So it's not buying from Elon Musk because he's got this fascist ideology, but you are going to buy from a communist country. It's just not. It's a bit illogical. Anyway, right. So Matt Scott. Here's a good point. Matt says it seems hypocritical for people to all of a sudden have a problem with the US imposing tariffs against countries who have had tariffs against the USA for decades. Matt, you're missing the point here. These countries haven't had tariffs against the United States for years, and you can check this yourself. Sorry, is that? You can check this one yourself by going on the internet and looking up what the tariff rate was for the countries you're claiming they had tariffs on the United States. Some of them might have had tariffs against the United States, because tariffs can come actually in another format, which I didn't talk about, which are so-called quality controls, which then therefore they can then refuse to take some. Like Japan did this in the 1980s with cars, for example, or the 1970s with cars. So Trump is completely wrong. I mean, the United States has put tariffs on countries which it had free trade agreements, and in one case with Mexico and Canada, it was Trump himself who signed the free trade agreement. Or I saw was it in the Senate, I think it was, when there was somebody saying, well, why have we put tariffs against Australia when we've got a positive balance with Australia? Why is it put against the United Kingdom when the balance in goods is in the United States' favor? It just doesn't make any. It's totally and utterly illogical, and this is, in the end, this will affect the standing of the United States, because first of all, as I said in other things relating to Ukraine, it makes the United States, the word of the United States, seem completely wrong. People won't believe the United States. When it signs something, it doesn't mean anything any longer. That's the number one thing. If you say you're going to do something, you have to do it. It's not voluntary. Sorry, I'll try and put some more light on. That doesn't help either. I'll put this one on over here. Is that any better? It's in my eyes now. Anyway, never mind. This is where the problem is. This is affecting US power. Rather than making America great again, America was great, is great, but this is likely to lead to further decline. People would question, well, how can we come to an agreement with the United States government when it doesn't keep its word? This is where the problem is. Anyway, Hans says the following: they voted for him to counter the increasing inflation and the general fear of an increasingly undermined middle class. Trump's current course is already disappointing his electorate. Yeah, I think, yes, I agree with, I think I probably agree with that. Yeah. But isn't it true that most of his voters are from poorer people? I mean, obviously his base is his base are poorer people, but a bit like the Conservative Party was, or Tory Party was in the 19th century in the United Kingdom. So it represented sort of the working class and the super rich, and the Liberal Party represented the middle. Isn't that the sort of situation in the United States? That's how I see it. Hans says, I agree with Matt that certain targeted and limited tariff tweaks would make sense, but not what has been proposed, implemented, reversed, etc., etc. Yeah. I mean, I am personally, as I said, I'm in favor of tariffs against China. But just to give an example, and this is now based on things which I seem to recall reading in the New York Times and Washington Post in 2017 when Trump tried this the first time. China responded with banning ridiculous soybeans. China started buying from Brazil and not from the United States. Therefore, the United States had to bail out, the government had to bail out the soybean farmers. It also led to some jobs in the steel sector being started, but again, I can't remember which of those two papers it was. It was a Reuters report that said that the United States, if I remember, I can't remember the numbers exactly. 1,880 jobs had been created in the steel industry, but 75,000 jobs had been lost. Not only that, each job was costing $860,000. Something along those lines. Another thing I really need to point out as well is if one is looking at encouraging industry to come to the country, the industry that now people don't sit there doing things by hand. It's robots which are doing it. If you go into a car manufacturing plant, it's all robots. In fact, my other channel, I've got film of the Mercedes plant. A Mercedes plant is, the only people are going around there just checking that the robots are okay and doing whatever. Everything is done by robots. Now, what I work in is in motorhomes, and motorhomes, because robots can't do motorhomes, they can't put furniture and things like this. They're handmade, so that's different. But those products like this perhaps would lend themselves to being farmed out to third world countries. I don't know, or poorer countries. But then again, they wouldn't have the skills base, and these are the problems which haven't been thought through. To give something from my own life, I was advising a political party in Poland, and there was the Polish then government, a socialist government, decided that it wasn't going to put steel, it was going to not permit steel to be imported for a certain period of time. And it said the reason for this is because there's a steelworks in Poland which was losing stacks of cash. But that steelworks in Poland made railway lines. And those that needed it, which were exporters from Poland, made things like white goods and cars. Well, you can't make a car from a railway line. And that was the problem. And I tried to make that point. And he said, well, why can't that Huta Katowice make these? Because it doesn't have the equipment. It wasn't prepared for that. And the fact that something makes steel, there's different grades and different types. This is the thing that politicians don't understand. well, some don't understand, and business people actually do. Anyway, so Matt asks, how can a country be a military power without an industrial base? Well, Russia isn't doing too badly. It has a very little industrial base. Russia is the economy is largely based. It's a developing economy. It's largely based on not agriculture. Well, it does export agriculture. It's largely minerals that it actually sells. Matt says shipbuilding is still done by manual skilled labor. Yeah, of course. There's yeah, to a certain extent, Matt. But I mean, it's not like it was in when Newcastle was great. I do not note that. I don't want to go back to when Britain was great, as to say in 1898, because I would probably be working down a coal mine, or if I was still alive, because at my age, like most people, well, maybe almost at an age where most people are completely finished by, you know, with the diseases that they got from the breathing in the coal dust and things like that. I have no desire for that whatsoever. But yeah, certainly there are still skilled people, and there are those skills that were once needed are no longer. You know, what I studied at university was technical translation theory, and it's now you can get computers which could do almost not quite as good maybe, but almost the same as what it took me 4 years at university to actually do. Linguistics and translation theory. So what? It's from a business point of view, it's almost as good. Maybe not quite, but it's almost there. Anyway, Ben says industry retooling. Good point. Anyway, so I didn't think I'd actually speak that long on this subject. I mean, I keep thinking of things. You know, sometimes I do things. Like yesterday, I did that on the execution of Johann Reinhardt, and afterwards I finished it, and I thought, just a minute, I didn't mention his most famous victims, and then I thought, oh, that was bad of me. Which were the Shirl siblings and the White Rose. I should have mentioned them anyway. But then again, you either mention all the victims or you don't mention any, and so that's what happened. In this case, I bet there's plenty of stuff I should have mentioned, but didn't. This I think somebody wrote on a previous video I did, was that you're getting into politics or something like that, and the thing is, this is politics is represented by history, and this is the thing. It's bringing it the past. You do not change history to suit your politics. You should change your politics to suit your facts. I for many years believed in a theory called trickle down, and I no longer believe in it, because I mean the evidence is overwhelmingly against it. And so therefore I mean I stopped, but I changed my ideology based on facts, rather being stuck in this idea of in a fixed idea. Okay, so thanks very much for being here today. It gets dark a bit earlier, and you know, I've gone south. I'm now much further south than I was last week. Now in southern Germany, but it gets darker here because it's beyond the 22nd of March. So between the 22nd of March and 22nd of September, it gets darker here faster than it does in northern climes. So that's why I've had this problem with the light. I have to see if I can resolve it for tomorrow. Tomorrow I'm talking about something else. Thanks for being here, Ben, and everybody else. And it would be really good though if we could have some, I don't know how to do this, but if I have some people actually sort of disagree, because I do appreciate it. As far as this, I have tried to find, I've listened to these so-called MAGA economists, but I just can't, other than listen to utter nonsense which you get on Newsmax or Fox News, which after 3 or 4 minutes I've heard enough of it. It just doesn't make sense. You cannot believe in something so much that, as Hitler thought, you could just believe. That's all you have to do, is to believe and it'll come true. That doesn't. You can believe in 2 and 2 equals 3 as much as you want, but it will always equal 4. Thanks for being here, and see you tomorrow. Bye for now.